Welcome to the Two Guys in a Cooler channel. I'm glad you could make it because today I'm going to be showing you how we make Basturma. Basturma, if you're not familiar with it, is a heavily seasoned, air-dried, cured piece of beef that is a staple in Armenian cuisine, Greek, Turkish cuisine, and it's absolutely delicious. This recipe is going to produce a Basturma that is super tender, incredibly flavorful, not overly dried, and you may very well never eat bresaola again. Let me show you how we made it. We're going to be starting off with the filet mignon, and you can trim it to where 100% of the fat is removed, make it completely lean. I like the fat, so we're going to leave that on. You could also use the eye of round if you want. I particularly find the eye of round a little chewy, so we're using the filet mignon. And to that raw filet mignon, we're going to go ahead and add our curing spices. Basturma requires a curing period for the beef, which is what we're doing now, and a drying period. And often you'll find in traditional recipes the salt box method being used with just salt. I'm personally not a huge fan of the salt box method because it's very easy to oversalt your meat. So what we're going to be doing is using the equilibrium curing method, which means we weigh our meat first and then all of the curing spices are added based off of the weight of the meat. That means our Basturma is going to be perfectly seasoned and ready for the drying period without having to soak it in water or anything like that. Now notice my cure mix is a little more than salt. We've added some wonderful regional spices to this particular Basturma. And as always, you can find the printable recipe with the complete instructions in the description box below. Because we're using the equilibrium method for curing, you want to make sure that you gather up all the spices, or at least 99% of the spices, and put them inside of the vacuum seal bag or the Ziploc bag that you're going to be using to cure your Basturma. You don't want to leave anything behind. And now that it's been vacuum sealed, or if you're using a Ziploc bag, remove as much air out of it as possible. We want to give Basturma that traditional flattened appearance. So I'm just going to put another little pan on top of the first one, and I'm going to weigh it down with about 10 pounds worth of weight. Flattening your Basturma is going to allow it to cure a lot faster, and depending on the size of your meat, it can be ready in just a couple of days. Each day you want to flip it and massage the spices into your meat. And for me, this is what mine looked like after roughly about 5 days. The equilibrium method won't allow your meat to get any saltier than the salt you initially added. So if you can't get to it when it's ready, that's totally fine. Keep it in your fridge till you're ready and then just process it then. This is our flattened Basturma. It looks great, and it's now time to get it ready for the drying stage. So to begin drying, what we're going to do is we're going to rinse off most of the spices that are on the exterior, wash off any extra liquids that accumulated, and we're doing that in just some cool water. As soon as we're done rinsing it off, we're going to take our cured piece of meat and blot most of the excess water off of it. I don't want my Basturma to be soaking wet for this next particular step, so I'm just going to put some paper towels around it and just allow it to soak up some of that extra water. It's still slightly damp, a little tacky, which is exactly how I want it. And this is just about ready to start drying. Now, traditionally, you're going to find Basturma just hanging in a room until it's ready to be coated in its spices. But we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be using some dry curing wraps from the sausage maker. You guys have seen me use these in other projects. It's basically collagen sheets that control the moisture loss. And by wrapping our cured piece of meat in a collagen sheet, we're going to be slowing the drying process way down. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to develop the flavor of the beef, we want to minimize any dry ring, and we want to create a Basturma with a tender and elegant mouthfeel. And that's exactly what this is going to help us do. So we're just going to take that cured filet, set it right in the middle of that cut collagen sheet, and go ahead and wrap it. Once we've wrapped it, and I'm not too worried about the air pockets right now, we can get those out later, we're going to go ahead and put a elastic netting around our Basturma, which is going to help that collagen sheet adhere to it. And now with a sterilized sausage pricker, just make sure it's cooled down before you prick your meat. We're going to go ahead and prick our Basturma, getting rid of any of those air pockets. And this Basturma is just about ready to start drying. Before we start drying, we're going to weigh our Basturma. And there's 2 stages of drying when it comes to making Basturma. You have the initial drying phase, and then you have the secondary drying phase where you coat it with spices. For the initial drying period, we're going to be targeting a 25% weight loss. And all of that's going to happen inside of a controlled environment. We're using a modified refrigerator where the temperature and the humidity are controlled. There you see my prosciutto. I got different salamis. In this chamber, we have a dehumidifier. That's the EverDry 1100. And we have a cool mist humidifier. And they both work together to keep the humidity at about 80%. This is going to hang out in our drying chamber, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 80% humidity, till we lose 25% of the weight, and that may take several weeks. But once that happens, it's time to get our spices ready. We've got fenugreek, we've got paprika, we're going to add some cayenne pepper, some black pepper, and we're going to come back with some kosher salt and some cumin. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Let's mix that together. This spice mix is going to act as the coating for our basturma as we move into stage 2 of the drying process. Right here, we're adding a pepper paste, which is going to add a lovely dimension to this basturma. And now we're going to come back with some water. I don't want to add all the water at once. We're going to add a little bit at a time and then whisk it. And what we're looking for is a very spreadable spice paste. Finally, I'm going to add some garlic paste to this mix, and we're just going to give it a whisk. And this is what the consistency should look like. It shouldn't be too watery. Let's go ahead and get our meat out of the chamber. It's officially lost 25% of the weight. As you can see, it's now covered in the beneficial mold Penicillium nalgiavense. This alone is going to add a whole nother dimension to this meat, and it actually protected it from any bad molds that could have been forming during the drying process. So let's remove the netting, remove the casing, and let me show you what we're going to do next. Our basturma has been drying for a couple of weeks. When I press on it, it's very soft, but I can also feel that there's no tough outer skin, so it's drying very evenly. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. When I bend it, it's flexible. And so it's time to move on to step number 2 of the drying process, where this is going to finish the drying. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually coat that basturma with this spice mix that we just made. If your spice mix is properly hydrated and you have the right consistency, it's not going to crack on you during the drying process, which is what we're looking for. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a nice thin coating on our cured meat and finish it off by dipping our fingers in some water and then smoothing out this particular paste. If you make your spice coating too thick, it's going to take too long to dry, which will cause a heavy dry ring to be formed, leaving you with an undesirable texture. With a butcher's needle, I actually weaved in some butcher's twine at the very top. This is going to give me a hanging point. I didn't do that on camera, but you get the idea. And then finally, we're going to put it back into our chamber. Now, this is 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 80% humidity, and here is where it's going to finish its drying process. And in this step, we're looking for that outer spice rub to completely dry out and to harden. Once that happens, your basturma is ready. Now, that generally means you're going to lose about another 8 to 10% of water weight from your meat, which is going to leave you with a perfectly tender and very flavorful basturma. And the easiest way to tell is to just simply touch it. As soon as you grab it and it's relatively dry to the touch, you're good to go. Now, depending on how dry you like it, you could pull it a little earlier, a little later, but this is what our basturma looks like. I think it's time to slice it up and see what it tastes like. Let's give it a taste, see what it tastes like. So right off the bat, I can tell you the texture is perfect. It's incredibly tender, very flexible. There's not a significant dry ring, which means it dried mainly even. And as it drapes over my finger, I can tell you right now that this bite is going to be velvety smooth, a lot like a prosciutto or a culatello. We've got a nice thin spice coating all the way around our basturma. Ooh, let's taste it. That's incredible. It's spicy, garlicky, a little smoky. The fenugreek is coming out along with that cumin, and it's super tender. This has got to be one of the most flavorful pieces of charcuterie I think I've ever eaten. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions about how to make this basturma, leave them in the comment section below. And if you're new to the channel, we want to say welcome. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. If you got anything out of this video, give it a thumbs up. Stay tuned because we've got some brand new fresh content on the horizon. We'll see you in the next one.